Okay, so good morning, colleagues and guests. It's 9:30 and let's get started on time. And thank you all for being here. And for those on Zoom, hello. Thanks for joining virtually. Today, we are very pleased and to welcome Professor Bob Fox, a very special guest from Australia. Professor Bob Fox is former professor in education at University of New South Wales between 2013 and 2020. He served at Hong Kong U Faculty of Education between 2000 and 2013 and was Deputy Director of Center for Information Technology in Education. He was awarded the Hong Kong U University Teaching Fellowship for Excellence in Teaching. Before working at Hong Kong U, he was Associate Director of the Center for Advancement of Education at Curtin University at Perth for 13 years. Professor Fox has published around 150 papers on learning and teaching innovation, change, staff development, and learning environment in higher education. And today, he'll be sharing his expert opinion on higher education innovation through blended and digital learning beyond the COVID era. With that, I ask that you give your full attention to Professor Fox. Professor Fox, over to you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we do.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so thank you. So my title for this keynote is optimistically higher education innovation through blended and digital learning beyond the COVID era. And of course, we're still in the COVID era, but I believe that we need to really nurture innovation that's happening now, and that we take that and sustain it beyond the COVID era, hence the optimistic title. So the outline for this and the context of my talk is obviously higher education has gone through major challenges and changes during this COVID outbreak, but there's also been a lot of innovation that has occurred within this period in terms of teaching and learning. And on that basis, I would propose that universities will never completely return to their old practices. I believe that we have learned so much during this COVID era that once we're beyond it, our teaching will continue to be different than it was before COVID. There's a lot more broad acceptance of digital and blended and hybrid learning, and there's also more acceptance of continuous innovation in our teaching practices. And these must be savored and sustained. And this is my deep belief that we need to savor these innovations that have been occurring and sustain them beyond the COVID era. The digital focus remains, demands adjustments to the delivery of teaching and learning. It's not the same with digital resources. I propose that the digital focus has made major changes to the way that we teach and the way that our students learn. So this keynote reviews some case initiatives in my experience, in my research, that focuses on improving the quality of blended and online learning, and will focus on curriculum and course design and associated staff capacity building in sustaining innovation and change in higher education. My case study is my own university, the University of New South Wales in Sydney. The university, UNSW, had this vision and still has this vision to be both a research and an education intensive university. And on that basis, developed a new strategic plan called the UNSW 2025. Obviously, I'm only going to be focusing on educational aspects of this, and I'll be pulling out certain aspects of educational initiatives that support the broad theories and initiatives that I feel are relevant to this conference and event. As background, UNSW is a large university. We have around 65,000 students. We have over 10,000 award programs, bachelor's degrees, masters, doctorates, etc., and diplomas, etc., like everyone else, and 7,500 courses. So it's a big university and it's pretty diverse. One of the first things we recognized, if we wanted to raise the profile of education, one of the key things we would have to do is to put in extra funding into educational initiatives. So we put aside an extra 500 million Australian dollars over a 10-year period to specifically push education initiatives across the university. This was adjusted in mid-2020 due to the COVID-19 outbreak, and I'll be talking a little about that later. But one of the fundamentals that we felt was important if we were going to affect change was to do it in an ecological and systemic way. So in that way, we could take advantage of some of the good things that were happening and to sustain those good things beyond this period of the strategic plan. We also saw a very central role for capability building for our teachers, and in that way also to elevate our teaching status. And I'll be talking about that particularly in this slide. With our capability building for education initiatives, we felt the first thing we needed to do was to provide our academics with a new opportunity to offer up to 450 academics out of our roughly 3,000 full-time equivalent staff, teaching staff, academic staff, an opportunity to become education focused. In other words, over a over a 5-year period, where they could apply for a new contract, which would enable them to focus purely on teaching and learning and have to do no research. So rather than the standard academic 40-40-20 split of 40% teaching, 40% research, and 20% through administration and services, we're saying that these teachers, these academics, can do 80% teaching with no research. So this was, we saw having 450 academics do this was a good size critical mass. And you can find out more information about that education-focused careers initiative when you click in through that after my talk. The other thing we did was that we recruited up to 70 PhD graduates and retrained them as educational developers to help us develop and redevelop courses of quality, especially in digital and online learning. And we started this in 2015. We also created an opportunity for our teachers to take the Higher Education Academy fellowships, and this they can do outside, to learn and also to get awards and credits for their learning with HEA qualifications and HEA fellowships. But at the same time, all our teachers in our university were required and are still required, it's a compulsory course, to do a 10-week Foundations of University Learning and Teaching, or FULT, and information, you can go to that URL to get more information about that. So all our teachers, we said, you need to train to be teachers in our university. During this 10-week intensive course, this is something you need to do. We also provided a beginning to teach opportunity for those particularly PhD students that were starting to do a little bit of teaching. And we also provided our teachers with an opportunity to do a graduate certificate in university learning and teaching, give them a bit more kind of academic and theoretical side to learning and teaching. We also offer them a master's course in education and also higher degrees in research if that's what they would like to do. So looking at one aspect of the ecological close, one of the major projects that we got involved in over a 5-year period starting in 2015 to 2020 was this project, which put aside $77 million Australian dollars into these 7 projects. And I'll just briefly go through those 7. The first was the digital uplift, to design and develop and redevelop 600 online hybrid and blended courses that were considered important across schools and faculties, to experiment with various digital assessment systems and to try to find some that would be worthy of trialing across the entire university, to set up an education academy to showcase excellence in teaching and to cultivate a shared community of practice across our teachers and provide opportunities for leadership and inspiration in learning and teaching across the university. We also wanted to focus on first-year student experience because we found that many of our first-year students do have particular problems in shifting from school-based learning to university learning, and to implement a plan for distinguished and support-driven first-year educational practices for our students. We also set up students as partners, which provided opportunities for students to partner in the creation of knowledge and development of teaching improvements and innovations. And we got our students to be involved in developing an online app on online communities. And we set up a summative peer review process, which established a process to generate the evidence of teaching practice as part of a compulsory component in academic promotion and to complement individual teaching awards. So this means that any teacher who wants to go for promotion for example, lecturer to senior lecturer or associate professor or professor, they would have to go through a summative peer review of their teaching. This is something that we continue to do and has gone on successfully over the last 6 years or so. As with many other universities, we use the outcomes-based approach, and particularly John Biggs's work, and we established various curriculum models and shared frameworks which were set into the university policy. And this one we called the Integrated Curriculum Framework. Again, afterwards, if you're more interested in that, I've done a video presentation of the Integrated Curriculum Framework, which takes you through all the different stages of that. But every program, every course has to use this framework in developing the curriculum for the entire university. So this is set in policy and agreed through our academic board. Within every individual course, we also wanted to provide a curriculum framework to enable teachers to develop resources and activities and support and mechanisms for the students. The key one we developed and used was the RAISE model, and I'll just briefly go through the RAISE. The RAISE stands for resources, and this is content and tools to enable students to learn. The second, very importantly, is formally and informally work on activities and tasks and give those to students for them to trial and to then see that they're achieving the learning outcomes that were set. To ensure that every course has a variety of supports for our students, and this is particularly important in an online way with our online courses, both peer and tutor support, but also technical support to resolve any emerging issues that they may have in their courses, and to provide our students with structured and formative ways to identify and improve on their own progress as they're working their way through the course. So this, as I say, the Integrated Curriculum Framework and the RAISE was built into the university policy and is a requirement of all our courses to follow, all of our programs to follow and to include and to structure their programs. More recently, and particularly during this COVID period, we've had a lot of interest in micro-credentialing. So these are very short courses, and those short courses can be used as individual or as part of a formal program. But all of those courses should also include the Integrated Curriculum Framework and articulate with the RAISE as a model. So to give an example of that, you can see this micro-credentialing and how it leads to either just a short course for someone who's working in the community, perhaps short courses leading to continuing professional education. So for example, as we know, and it's the same in Hong Kong, you have doctors, you have teachers who are required to do a certain number of continuing professional education courses to improve on and keep their skills updated. But we can also provide these micro-credential courses that could be led into and be part of a formal degree program, or indeed can be in addition to a degree program that the students are taking. Here's an example of micro-credentialing using an agile and hybrid modular design structure. And I'll just highlight the yellow section there. This section could include micro courses that are perhaps MOOCs, massive open online courses. They could be wet labs or field work studies, student individual or group projects, work placements, virtual labs, etc. But all of this formally fitting into the course. The key thing I want to focus on really was the encouragement and sustainability and lessons that we're learning from the innovative practices during this COVID period. And we decided that it was very important to actually develop some dimensions of education innovation so that we could make a platform of understanding between all of our teachers across the different disciplines, across the different schools, and across the faculties and in the entire university, so they could talk about educational innovation. We defined educational innovation as an enhancement to existing educational practices. And the purpose of developing these dimensions of educational innovation was to identify innovative educational practices using technology and to develop a dimensions of educational innovation framework to be used as a professional development tool for teachers, for peer reviews, and to monitor change and innovation in educational practices in our institution. So this is the diagram. You can see this kind of radar diagram there. We identified 5 dimensions of educational innovation. And we took these 5 dimensions of educational innovation, adapted from research that Professor Nancy Law and colleagues were working on at the University of Hong Kong, Hong Kong Dai Hoc, back in 2011, and they developed an excellent book on this topic. And they focused on examining aspects of educational innovation as seen in the study that they were involved in across 28 countries around the world of educational innovation using technology, and 128 cases were examined to come up with these 6 dimensions, which include, and we've adapted those 6 dimensions to suit our own institution, the teacher roles. So looking at how has the teacher role changed to be innovative or more innovative? What about the student's role? In what way has the student role changed and evolved? What about the technologies? Not just the technology that's being used, but how the technology is being used. In what way is this seen as being innovative or different? How it is actually enhancing the learning experiences of students. Communities was another aspect that we saw was very important. How has the course changed to bring in more of the community, perhaps from outside the school, outside the university, bringing in the professions, bringing in the communities across, for example, the professions, such as bringing in doctors, nurses, social workers, whatever, that's relevant to the course, into the course using the technology. And then actually also looking at the overall impact of the innovation and change. To what level is this innovation different from existing practices? Does it have some new elements? What are those new elements? What about the emergent practices? Are there some things there that are innovative, which are starting to look as if they're actually in a major way going to change the course and the way that the course is taught over a sustainable period of time. We were particularly interested in looking at sustainability over a year period plus, when we were looking at that. Now, these levels, these levels of of the degrees of innovation, we've put underneath those 5 dimensions of educational innovation. Those 5 levels are, okay, if you look at that diagram, you look at the center there, 1, you can say that that is existing practice. It may be very good teaching practice, it may be very good, but it perhaps there's no elements there at that point of innovation. But if the teacher is starting to develop new ideas and practicing those new ideas, so for example, in this, you can see that with the orange, in the dimension of the teacher's role has changed to a 2nd degree. So if you look at that level, the 2nd has some new elements. And gradually over time, one would expect that this orange shape would maybe change, and you would start to see it grow towards the outer levels, showing it's becoming more and more innovative. So going from existing practice to some new elements of innovation, to emergent practices, to being innovative, and then to being most innovative. So this was the dimension. And this allows us to then write short studies of teaching practices and to identify how were these practices innovative based on looking at these 5 dimensions of teacher, student communities, technologies, and impact, and to what degree, to what level. And with that, we can then make comparisons between the types and the levels of innovation between individual teachers within schools and across schools and across the university and beyond. So what this dimensions of educational innovation has enabled us to do is to set up this common platform of understanding, this common platform to discuss educational innovation, to compare educational innovation, and maybe to share innovation and sustain innovation, not only within that school, but beyond the school. So the uses of the educational innovation as far as a professional development tool is, and for recognition is, we've developed online templates. These dimensions can be used for teachers for self-assessment of their own teaching of innovation. The template is used in workshops for self and peer assessment of levels of innovation. The completed templates can be used as a catalyst in academic career conversations with academic mentors, as evidence for the Higher Education Academy, and for evidence for going for learning and teaching awards on innovation across the institution, and also to include in teachers' personal e-portfolios as well. So we were using this to identify innovation and change in educational practices, both in individual courses and in groups of courses in faculties within and across the university and beyond. So to sum up then, because I realize I'm coming to the end of my time here, the 4 key takeaways I have for you, which we have learnt on this new normal that we've moved into within the COVID era, is we need to adopt an ecological and systemic approach to change if we're going to sustain this change during and beyond the COVID era. And we need to have shared design models and frameworks and mental models so that we have this common platform of understanding across the institution that we can talk about in workshops, in conferences, within and beyond the institution. And we need to recognize the importance of staff capability building across the institution. And this is so essential to ensure that we have good use of the shared frameworks and the new pedagogies and the innovative practices that we've introduced. And finally, that systemic methods for sharing and rewarding good and innovative practices is key to ensuring that we can learn our lessons now within the COVID era and beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Fox. Now, we would like to invite Professor Poon, Larry Ka-Yeung, Adjunct Associate Professor of the Department of Marketing at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. He will be sharing his topic, Applying Robotics in Immersive Learning.
So next, let us introduce our second keynote speaker, Professor Larry Poon. Professor Larry Poon is the CEO of Robon Technology Limited. Since 2002, he has been teaching MBA, EMBA, and Master of Science programs at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. He has won many outstanding teaching awards. Professor Poon has been investing and running innovative and tech companies since 2001. As an academic, as well as a practitioner, he shares his knowledge and wisdom as the host of the long-standing radio programs called New Thinking in Management and Talking to CEOs by Radio Television Hong Kong. Today, Professor Poon will be sharing his expert opinion on applied robotics in immersive learning. Without further ado, please join me to welcome Professor Poon to the stage.
Thank you very much. As you can see, my 執生能力 is very good, right? Anyway, okay. Now, thank you very much again for inviting me to be here to share the knowledge with you. It's my pleasure to share knowledge at all time. And today, I think the design of the entire program, I mean, this event is very good. Although we are under the new normal situation, again, this is the fifth wave of the COVID-19 in Hong Kong. And why I say this is very good arrangement, because for Professor Bob, he mentioned the frameworks and also the strategic point of view about the design of our curriculum, for example, or our course and programs. And then here is the my sharing is about a practical approach. That is really down-to-earth things that are every teachers or our professors, we have to face daily, right? So in one of my many cases, I would like to choose one case I have done recently for 2 times already. This case is about the program design execution for the MBA program of Imperial College Business School. And the background is, as written on the PPT, we, APIB, organized these programs for doing business in China for the MBA program for several years already. Usually the students will come to Hong Kong and then to visit some companies, and on site we will do the lecture over there. But you can imagine under the new normal, this is impossible for us to do so. And then everybody go online. And in year 2020, we have learning objectives. Again, is about to teach how can we do business in China under the new normal, but we add the term new normal over there. And then after the lesson, students need to work in group to develop the business strategies. Okay, I think this makes sense, right? And then what would we normally do? I think most of you or some of you will do like me, understand the need and objective, and then you will have a draft outline to guide the program design, such as what is the new normal? What is the situation of new normal in this part of the world? Because for the resident program, the students have to come to Hong Kong and China. And how do we compete in the new normal in this part of the world, right? And then case study follow, and then reflection exercise or so-called problem-solving exercise. That is the way we do their course design, usually, okay? What, how, case study, and reflection, right? And then what would be the most critical points for us here is about choose the case study, right? Then the choice of case are what should be the case, how do we deliver the case is not only critical, but also difficult because under new normal, right? So you have two options. Option one, of course, we go all the time, Harvard cases, or sometimes we Google search some examples, try to get some the most updated situation from the world or from this part of the world, and then to integrate them and then to share them with the knowledge or some theoretical framework we want to share with the students. And option two, you can try to get some cases or your hands-on experience, your personal experience, and then to share your real life's work with the students to make it more real to the students, right? And for me, I have myself as a practitioner, I have my bathtub factories. Actually, I have many business, and there are 3 of them are doing very well under new normal. One is the bathtub factory in China. And then I have a management consulting business doing quite well, but more particularly is a tech company, is an AI robotic company, also doing very well in the new normal. So how should I choose? Which one should I use, right? And then I start my strategic thinking. When we use our strategic thinking, we start from some wisdom, timeless principle. So I found some timeless principle over there, start from Plato. And then Plato said, necessity is the mother of innovation. So I have to thought of what type of innovation I have to do for the course design and under the new normal, right? And then Aristotle said, pathos, pathos, logos, in order to leverage these 3 points, these 3 ideas in conveying our message during the execution of the program, right? And then, of course, for the course design, I think some of you may identify also this framework called Bloom's taxonomy, right? There are 6 categories, right? Knowledge, comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. And then for me, according to the objectives of this program for this residence week, they have to do the application, right? If you still remember, after the lessons, they have to apply the knowledge to their target company to formulate a set of business strategies. So this is the outcome, the learning outcome should be application in this case, right? And then my framework, because I have been using this framework for a long time, called strategic focus when I formulate strategies. And I'm going to share with you a little bit great details at a later stage. As I mentioned, our need to buy in, students, they need to buy in. Otherwise, they won't really apply it because they will just get the knowledge. They are aware about a knowledge framework, and then they put it aside. They are not really going to apply it and make their works irrelevant to what they have learned, actually. So this is waste everybody's time. So what should we do, make it relevant? What should we do? And here comes the strategic focus framework I have developed, and I would like to share with you. Now, first of all, we have to identify their need and motivation. But this part I already shared with you, right? And then the value proposition, what we are going to offer to them to buy in. For example, the knowledge and practice under new normal in this part of the world, right? And then technology, because everybody aware of technology. Technology itself can be the accelerator. So I have to add some technology elements in the case study. instead of just a management consulting case study to share with you how the management consulting business doing in this part of the world under new normal, then maybe the tech company one would be better, right? And then strategic means, what does it mean to you? That means if we choose the delivery mode or the case study as the mean of teaching, it has to be highly relevant to the value proposition and the motivation, okay? So this is the main focus of what we have to do. When we do the course design, we have to make three things relevant to each other. I would say, I will correct my words again, highly relevant to each other to make it successful, right? So option one or option two? Right. I think you will say option two, right? Right? Agree? Right. Because I saw most of you didn't raise your hand, but you just nod your heads, right? Okay. Option two. No, actually, I do option three. I set you up. I do option three. What is option three? It's story within story. Because I'm thinking of how can we do something to make the students and me to jump into the case together. That is, how can we make them to have immersive experience, right? So I'm thinking of how can we do case within a case, right? It's a mise en endemic. How can we do it? And therefore, I use Robon, one of my companies, AI robotics company, is a startup company doing very well under new normal, and use one of the robots called Freedom to conduct the lesson. I use the robot to conduct the lesson. This is, I think, a very innovative approach at that period of time, and not innovative anymore because I use it several times already. Okay, because in tech company, 2 years is already a long time for us, right? And by doing that, the students actually jump into the case, and then they got their hands-on experience and their immersive learning experience, and to increase, so as we can increase their buy-in level. Okay. And then go back to the case. I use Robon. Robon has a value proposition called technicalization. What is technicalization? Actually, I coined this word. I coined this word myself. Technicalization is we integrate technology into an ecology or a particular industry to make the industry or the ecology more productive. Or if I use the word of Professor Bob, is enhancement. If we talk about education, right? How can we use the technology to enhance our teaching and learning experience, for example? Okay. And then I explained the creation of the freedom during the case study. When I do the execution, then, for example, the pain point of professor and teacher under new normal is we here, we have no freedom to interact with students just like now. I can't interact with you, it's difficult. Of course, we can do some Q&A. Now, if I do something right now, you will see the difficulty of interaction. In my programs, most of my programs, I usually go to their students. Now, if I really walk around, you see, it's very difficult. Why? Because the cameraman is very difficult for chasing me. Right? If I want to interact with them, Q&A, close to them, because we know that it's important for a professor or teacher to have some body language and eye contacts with the students, so as to. Now you see the difficulties. Right? And we have less freedom in our daily practice. Now we have a little bit more freedom because we have a team of a crew to help us to do the shooting and follow my action, right? And then I have the interaction with them. But in a daily practice, teachers, everyone here, we have the pain point that actually what you have to do is like Professor Bob, sorry about that, but I had to mention, is sitting in front of the screen and do what? Do as a KOL every day. Is a laughable matter? Is actually, I cry so many times actually, right? So I'm thinking of the creation of freedom actually in my robot companies. I have to admit that I have an advantage because I can create a robot by my companies, right? And then robot freedom can actually free me. On one hand, I can talk to the product or talk with the students. I can illustrate some things that I want to express. So I can build up the relationship with my audience. Better emotional bonding by interaction, right? Okay, if I have that, the creation of freedom, the robot. And then on the other hand, the audience won't miss the slides when I'm doing the screen sharing, okay? If I have the robot to help me, just like the cameraman to follow me, you know, to try to catch every single conversations that I have, or the interaction, the most critical moment, sometimes we call it moment of truth, when I interact with the audience or the students, okay? What, really? Can we really do that? It seems that impossible, right? Start from the very beginning, it seems that impossible. Now, actually, you are immersive because you act as the MBA students of Imperial College right now, because I'm explaining the exact things to you and actually to them, that I have pain point and I use robot called freedom to free me. Okay. And suddenly I stood up, moved around like that. I have just done to you, and conduct a virtual tour. And actually, the student thought I have been using a computer or a camera for the video conferencing and teaching, but it's the robot doing the job. Freedom followed me and gave a tour to introduce how robot engineers, my company's engineer, create robots in the workshop. And the student teacher keep doing Q&A, keep doing the Q&A, right? But now it's difficult for you to do Q&A. If I move around just now, right? Suddenly, if I move, Esther immediately pass me the mic, as you can see just now, right? Then, this is the actual situation. When I conduct a course at that time, it's static one. And then I suddenly stand up. Now, when I conduct the course, everybody like you right now. And then I use different camera, 1, 2, 3, 4 cameras to show the actual situation. So they thought, Professor Poon, you are using cameras to explain, to give us the tour about your company. Okay. And suddenly we use the robot and then we move around. Just like this. I walk out there and then I use one robot to take a look at video shooting of our interactions. And when I move on, I go to introduce how I produce freedom, how I create freedom. Not on the screen sharing, just like just now, but in my office. Okay. And you know, very limited position. I can't move around. Now you can see I move around. Okay, just for example,
I move to my robot.
It's not
And then
cameraman, it's the
The
robot.
robot can follow me, right? Or even I can use my motion control to ask the robot to go up. You see that? So to make me have freedom to do my presentation. You know what I mean? So this robot is called freedom.
And then move around.
And you can see from this angle, you start to see our another newest robot. This one is called Sawu. Sawu is actually
And also this one.
and then here I want you to look at the other side. Can you see me here? Ian or Rebecca, can you see me here? This is the other angle called robot stage.
Yes,
Yes, you can see me, right?
thank
No.
you. Yeah.
You can see actually when you heard the lady's voice is during the using the Zoom, the video conferencing instead of live streaming. It's a technology actually. Okay, I don't use any carry the mic or like this. I just like during the tour, right?
From here, actually you can see freedom over there. Not me. Okay.
We have a questions from Robert.
When I move around, I can't see the questions.
Now this is very funny because when we use Zoom, we have the chat, right? But the students forget actually we can have the direct conversation when I'm doing the virtual tour. You know what I mean? Just like, no, they can't switch the mode suddenly when I use not the camera, but use the robot. Okay, so he sent the chat, and finally I call him out.
Sorry, Rebecca, it wasn't raising my hand. It was a clap for freedom.
All right.
Good job, freedom.
Okay, so they got their first-hand experience, their immersive learning experience. Actually, if we have the up to now, actually we can send them the 3D goggles, and I can use the 3D camera. And what happened to them if this is the case? Is really the metaverse experience. They can really just like standing here right now. Okay, I tried one time already, but not in this case because that one is for executive training. They pay more. I'm serious because you know that for self-finance program, we need budget, as mentioned by Professor Bob, resources, right? Okay, so
you know, very, and you can see a limited from this, and then I can't use
here. So, as the creator of freedom and a teacher with passion, I provide evidence that freedom can greatly improve my teaching and students' interactions. So really leverage the 3 ideas of Aristotle. And the program was actually very successful, ranked #1 among all the programs and got very good feedback. And I think one of the sharing is very important is that I love how generous he was and not okay, is that offer for us to send suggestions and ideas to him. But more importantly is love the tour around the office, and it's only make us want to come and visit even more. So you can imagine we got repeated customers after that, right? So that is all for my presentation today. And hopefully we can share more at a later stage. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And now a 20-minute panel discussion shall begin.
Thank you very much, Professor Fox and Professor Poon, for your insightful talks. For the guests who are on site, you're welcome to raise any questions, and our MCs will pass on the mics to you. And for the guests who are online right now, feel free to drop your questions. And shall we start? Any questions from the floor? Adam, hi. Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning. Thanks to Professor Poon for giving us this very interesting and innovative topic. I would like to know, because personally, I think I can speak for many other teachers in the room that we are definitely very interested in your robot. Okay, right now in our classrooms, we do have a small camera installed there, and it's a little limited tracking capability. But the one you show us, that just really blew our minds. So I'd be interested to know, are you planning to commercialize this product? And if yes, how much will it cost for our college to acquire some of them? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the questions. This is very commercial questions, actually. Okay, now this one actually, I just seen this camera. This camera has a special function in your facility. It has a simple follow me function. This one, it can follow your facial recognition through your facial recognition, right? First of all, you have a motion for this camera, and then after the motion, this camera will focus on you, track on you, and then you move around. But as you mentioned, and this one has the limitation about your freedom of movement, because if I move forward to you, for example, these are 3 meters away, and you have some problems about the tracking, as well as you cannot hear me over there. I mean, the audience cannot hear me over there, right? So you need really a crew like them, the crew helping us to do so. But as mentioned, the daily work for us, every teachers here, we need a robot assistant, just like assistant to do the job, right? So I didn't do commercialization for this robot because I'm looking for some partners to do more. It needs some more research to do that, because to move around, we need more applications so as to show the possible bug of the robots and the AI system embedded inside. Okay, I think I need 2 to 3 more months to make it perfect for use, and therefore welcome for research cooperation. Is it a good news for you? And then I think this robot can go now up for first industrial prototype, not the prototype, proof of concept and prototype done already, to further research on the AI program together. And then the first prototype costs less than 400,000 Hong Kong. But for mass production, I think for our daily use, the robot has to go below 100,000. Okay, have to be cheaper. Sorry about that. Cheaper for labor cost. You know what I mean? Once you put the robot over there for each classroom, then you can really have to work out the productivity improvement. That means invest for $1 resources, right? Invest for $1, and then you can save, for example, half of them, and at the same time increase the productivity, the freedom of the teacher. So less than 100,000, that is my target price. Okay, so welcome for cooperation to further research on this. I think this is a great one. It's actually the invention. It's an invention. Okay.
Thank you, Professor Poon and Dr. Wong. And for the guests who are online, you can see a link, a Padlet link, where you can type in your questions and raise the discussion topics online. And let me see, we have a couple of questions from Phoebe, our lecturer from Languages and Communication, for Professor Fox. Hi, Professor Fox. So one of the questions would be, how do teachers and students taking the ecological approach realize the potentials in transferring knowledge and skills across disciplinary practice, as the ecological community in higher education involves a cluster of dynamic resources, knowledge and skills orchestrated via educational technology? So Professor Fox, thank you.
Thank you for that question. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay, it's an excellent question, but it's very broad. I think the first thing I would say is that it's something that takes time, and that's why in my presentation I talked about the students as partners as being a very important part of that initial project, which was the $77 million one. I think getting students involved in the development of teaching and learning resources was a very important start, so that we got students involved in the curriculum process and what we were trying to do, and involved in them continually reviewing and commenting on finding ways of actually improving the hybrid online resources that we were developing. Let me give you one example of that. In one of our foundation physics courses, we have a very large number of students doing this course. It's 1,500 students, because the course is taught to students not only who want to major in physics, but also people who want a generic course in physics. So hence we've got such a large number. With the, we've identified within the curriculum there over the years some problematic areas that students generally have found very difficult to overcome. So we've got students to work with us in developing exercises and activities that will help them actually resolve these problems, and then creating those in an online environment so students can go off and actually work on those questions. Those examples of helping students to resolve their problems in physics online is also evaluated and reviewed, again, not only by teachers, but also by groups of students. We actually paid students to be involved in this as well, so that they could recognize, they could see that they were being appreciated and recognized for their contribution to improving the exercises and activities. So that's one example. Another example was in, say, engineering, where we had a problem that a lot of students were having a great deal of difficulty in understanding the central role of mathematics, because a lot of students found maths awfully boring, but actually, you know, maths is hugely important, as we all know, in engineering. So we got hold of actual engineers, and we got engineers to be, who are practicing in the field, to be talking to some of our students about their experiences and the difficulties, and why is there some way that the engineer could actually throw some case studies of showing the students simply the central role of mathematics, so they were able then to help with that. Now, this is not answering your question entirely, but it's giving you some indicators of some of the complex ways that we've been trying to firstly engage students in identifying problem areas, and then engaging students and the professions in finding solutions and in finding better ways, so that not just the existing students, but also future students can benefit from the resolutions that we're developing in our online way. I hope that answers some part of your questions. I'd be happy to go into more detail online, maybe through direct email with any of the delegates that want to ask me more specific questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Fox. We still have a couple of questions online, but before that, can we have one more question from the floor? So we have, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. This is Roger Chen from the Division of Social Science, Humanities, and Design. I enjoyed very much, the presentation, which is very informative, very detailed research. I would like to invite the speakers to comment if you are aware of the OECD 2020 report with regards to the future of schooling. And in that report, it highlights 4 major scenarios in terms of the future development of education. And I would like to invite the speakers to comment in the light of the pandemic situations. A lot of things have moved into the new normals in terms of teaching and learning. And I was actually very impressed, by Professor Poon's presentations about the Rolls-Royce type of immersive learning of the metaverse. But that points to another directions about the fairness and access to education. So 10 years back, we talked about the digital divide. And in this day and age, it seems that the situations has actually omitted, increased. And I just wonder, in the light of the broader schemes of education worldwide highlighted in the OECD report, how and in what way that modern technology is actually able to address the issues about the disparities and also the differences in terms of gaining access to the technology. Just a footnote to that, imagine, if your robot is going to operate in this lecture theater, I think it's going to be extremely trying. Just one observation, we perhaps will not necessarily have the luxury like the IC laboratories that the robots can move around freely to engage the audience. So just my 2 cents, on the future development of education. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the questions. And first of all, I think our technology is the trend, but technology is only the accelerator. And the term technization, I call it, is about using the technology integrated to the particular industry or ecology. But the main purpose to make our life better. Now, if we have to do that, actually, as I just mentioned, I hope to make the tech as economical as possible. Now, if you really assess or to study the tech trend, like the 3D printer, like the chips, 3D printer, start from the very beginning. It's very bulky and very expensive, 3 million for one 3D printer. But to print out the volume is very small, right? To print out a small piece of like anything but small. But now 3D printer, 30,000, but can print a big piece of as a basin, right? You can print a big size things, right? Big size object. What does it mean? It's a Morse theory. Morse theory told us the technology will go very fast, exponential growth, and the cost of the chips like Intel is going down and more efficient. And therefore, the first Rolls-Royce robots coming out, as you mentioned, is for 1 or 2 programs. Therefore, I said that is not the time for the mass production, as I just interact with other audience over there, right? Professor Wong, right? And I think at a later stage, technology like this will be for most of the schools or universities. It will go from 100,000 to 50,000, or lastly will be 10,000 per classroom, and then it will for the mass. It will be for the mass. So this is the particular characteristics of technology, I think. Just like the internet, start from the very beginning is intranet, and then internet, and then very expensive to use it. Now you can freely use it, right? So I think this is one trend, but it takes time, but I think it will be a short time. Okay.
Thank you. If I could, is there time for me to comment too? I'm not sure. Could be.
Could be a quick feedback.
Okay, yeah. So I think, I mean, again, that's a very large and complex question, but over the years, okay, there's been a lot of experimentation and use of technology in situations where there are very limited resources. And I think the technology philosopher Don Ide has written quite extensively about this, on that technology as a technological cocoon of our society. It's there, and I would agree with the previous speaker that prices do come down. We are starting to see new openings, but I mean, there are just so many very innovative practices, and I think that's the thing we need to focus on. The technology itself certainly has some advantages, but as Don Ide would say, for every advantage of technology inclusion in education, there is a disadvantage. And I think that's certainly something we need to look at. I think it does have lots of answers for it, but it actually also creates lots of problems. It really depends on how that technology is used to support individual and group student learning. And I think that needs to be factored in when we're talking about how can we make technology available to the mass for very low costs. It's not all good news. Technology does not necessarily bring good things. Having said that, there are lots of things where technology is actually producing huge opportunities and advantages. But in terms of what we've been talking about, in terms of innovation in higher education, certainly in my dimensions of innovation framework, where we're looking at technology, as I said in my talk, we're not just looking at the technology itself. The fact that you're using, say, a new piece of technology doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually improving student learning. We really need to look at improvements into how students are learning. And indeed, the research that Professor Nancy Law was doing in that large sites project across 28 countries, 128 case studies around the world, she and her colleagues found that a lot of the most innovative practices of innovative pedagogical practices using technologies were where low sophisticated technologies were being used, and in very innovative ways that really did make an impact on student learning. So that's all I'll say at that point.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Fox.